What would it mean to ask men trained for battle to spend their days planting instead of patrolling? Imagine the early light over a plain, the steady clink of spades and the hum of diesel, the same discipline that once marched in formation now spaced out across furrows and irrigation channels. The story at the heart of this video begins in that scene, where a government in crisis chose to meet two emergencies at once by turning a portion of its military and allied volunteers toward the land. It is a story of practical urgency, political theater, and human risk. I want you to feel both the hope and the warning that come with it, and to decide for yourself whether this experiment can deliver lasting change. The country I am talking about has been battered by a relentless cycle of violence and deprivation. Towns emptied as families fled for safety, markets that once connected farmers to city tables slowly shrank, and millions faced food stress. Against that backdrop, the leadership announced an ambitious agricultural push. Machines were purchased, seeds and pumps were distributed, training centers opened, and public ceremonies framed the effort as a patriotic duty: feed the nation, reduce reliance on imports, and reweave the social fabric torn by conflict. On camera, tractors rolled and smiling trainees posed beside sacks of seed. Those scenes became the visible face of a larger policy ambition to make food security part of national survival strategy. On paper, the logic is straightforward. People who already live with discipline, hierarchy, and the ability to organize under stress can be trained in modern agricultural techniques. If they learn how to maintain a pump, calibrate a seeder, plan rotations, and manage storage, they can produce at scale. If those harvests reach functioning markets, they can reduce food imports, stabilize local prices, and create jobs in processing and transport. And if former fighters or volunteers who once answered a different call are given steady, respected work with pay and community ties, the theory goes, they are less likely to return to violence. The immediate promise is tangible: more productive fields, fuller markets, and the conversion of manpower from conflict to production. But even the best-laid plans meet a stubborn reality. Agriculture is deeply seasonal and highly local. Planting calendars depend on rain, soil types vary block to block, and supply chains depend on secure roads and functioning buyers. Training delivered out of season or far from the land people will cultivate can be wasted. Equipment needs maintenance, spare parts, and operators who can diagnose problems. Markets need coordination so that harvests have buyers and storage, otherwise farmers are left with perishable produce and no profits. And in a place where armed groups still move, storage sites and fields can be looted, harvests stolen, and new enterprises intimidated. That combination of fragile logistics, ecological constraints, and persistent insecurity is what transforms a promising pilot into a cautionary tale if follow-through is insufficient. Beyond logistics, there is a political and ethical dimension that cannot be ignored. Using manpower associated with the state and its proxies for economic projects blurs distinctions between civic development and political control. When the state shows tractors and parades workers in uniform through broadcast media, it creates an image of competence and renewal. For supporters, those images are proof that the leadership is tackling both insecurity and scarcity. For critics, the same images can look like carefully staged propaganda, an effort to build legitimacy and civic myth while more uncomfortable political questions go unanswered. Those questions include the independence of local institutions, the protection of rights, and whether development is being used to reward loyalty rather than meet need. If you listen to people who have stepped into the training fields, you hear portraits of real gains. Trainees describe the pride of learning how a pump works, how a drip line is laid, and how mechanized planting dramatically reduces the backbreaking labor that once defined smallholder farming. Families tell of a season where food returned to the table and school fees could be paid. Local entrepreneurs note the sudden demand for packaging, transport, and small processing. These are tangible, human benefits that are easier to see than abstract policy goals. They matter because they convert theory into daily life. At the same time, rights groups and humanitarian organizations offer a warning chorus. When state-aligned militias or hastily trained volunteers are folded into economic projects without clear oversight, abuses can follow. Reports from independent monitors have documented cases where volunteer defense forces and similar auxiliaries have been implicated in violations against civilians. Those realities make the stakes painfully clear. Converting fighters into farmers without robust accountability and protection measures can create new cycles of harm, especially in multi-ethnic areas where mistrust runs deep. Any program that touches security actors must grapple with the legacy of past violence and with guarantees for civilian safety. Media and social platforms have amplified both the hope and the uncertainty. Short viral clips show uniformed men in fields, sometimes presented as an instantaneous, triumphant conversion. Those clips travel fast, and they are often stripped of essential context, whether trainees received months of instruction, how harvests were marketed, or whether participants had a real choice. In the swirl of online attention, the most emotional images tend to outrun sober verification. That amplifies both praise and skepticism and makes it harder for outside observers to know where reality ends and spectacle begins. To understand whether a program like this could succeed at scale, you have to look at the whole ecosystem: seeds and machinery, training and technical support, secure transport, buyer contracts, storage and processing, and the rule of law. You also need sustained financing and transparent accounting, because when large amounts of equipment and funds are distributed, the temptation to divert resources grows unless oversight keeps pace. The right mix of public investment, private partnerships, and community governance can make transformation durable. The wrong mix turns a national project into a symbolic photo opportunity with little lasting benefit. Consider the economic mechanics. If mechanization increases yields and reduces post-harvest losses, local markets can fill more reliably and prices may stabilize. That helps both city consumers and rural producers. Processing and preservation create value chains and jobs, reducing reliance on raw commodity exports while keeping more income inside the country. Yet each of those steps requires functioning logistics. A tractor in a field does not by itself build a mill or a refrigerated supply line. That takes coordinated planning, private sector confidence, and, crucially, security so goods can move without fear of theft or attack. Security is the hinge on which the whole plan swings. In areas where armed groups still operate, fields and warehouses can become targets. Farmers can be coerced into producing for one faction or another, undermining the very goal of neutral food production. For programs involving former fighters or volunteer brigades, the question of command and control is crucial. Who supervises them? Who ensures they cannot be redirected toward political coercion or used to extract resources from communities? The answers determine whether the program stabilizes or further militarizes rural life. There is also an international angle to consider. In recent years, the country at the center of this story has shifted parts of its foreign and security posture, rejecting some old partners and cultivating new ones. That diplomatic repositioning shapes who can provide technical assistance, spare parts for equipment, and market access for processed goods. External actors can be helpful partners, but their involvement often comes with political implications that affect trust and long-term viability. So what does success look like? It looks like trained operators who know how to maintain equipment, local cooperatives that manage processing and storage, and diversified markets that welcome new supplies. It looks like village committees that include women and traditionally marginalized groups in decision-making. It looks like transparent procurement, public ledgers showing where equipment went and who manages it, and independent auditors verifying outcomes. And it looks like a decline in incentives to return to violence, because livelihoods offer steady income and social standing outside the logic of armed groups. What does failure look like? It looks like parked tractors in depots, harvested crops stolen or sold under duress, and a return to shortcut solutions that prize image over impact. It looks like new elites who control valuable agricultural inputs while ordinary citizens see little change. It looks like the militarization of economic life rather than the opposite. And it looks like the tragic hollowing out of trust in communities that had hoped for recovery. Let me bring this back to the human level. Meet a trainee in a small town who once guarded a road. He has lost friends, he has watched markets vanish, and he wants a steady future. Training gave him practical skills, and in the best-case scenario he finds dignity in work he can pass on to his children. He learns to diagnose a clogged pump, to map a field slope for water, to stack grain in a ventilated storehouse. Those skills can change a life. But imagine after weeks of labor his storage is raided, or a buyer refuses to pay because armed actors control the route. Those are the moments that make or break the promise. The difference between dignity and despair is often small and depends on institutions that protect people and markets. As you watch and think about this, remember it is not simply an economic experiment. It is a political choice about how a state mobilizes power and resources. Is the goal to empower communities and build resilient food systems, or is it to create spectacles of transformation that underpin a leader's authority? In the hardest places both impulses can coexist, sincere efforts to feed people, mixed with political calculation. That ambivalence is what makes the story so compelling and so important to watch closely. For viewers who want to understand deeper, ask yourself practical questions that go beyond the headlines. How are training programs designed and who certifies competency? Where are the spare parts and maintenance budgets coming from for imported tractors? How are harvests guaranteed a market instead of being captured by intermediaries with political ties? Who monitors abuses and ensures that volunteers or former fighters are not used to coerce communities? Those operational questions turn abstract promises into measurable tasks. There are also deeper moral questions. When a state calls on people who once fought to farm, what obligations does it hold toward them? Should participation be voluntary, compensated fairly, and paired with options for reintegration into civilian life? How do you protect vulnerable groups from being conscripted into state projects? These are difficult ethical crossroads where policy meets human dignity. This story also teaches a broader lesson about narrative and verification. In the age of viral video, bold claims travel faster than careful reporting. A clip of men in uniform in a field becomes the entire story for many viewers. That ease of amplification creates a responsibility for creators and consumers alike to ask about context, to verify claims, and to hold institutions accountable for both words and outcomes. The promise of feeding a nation is powerful, but it must be matched with transparency and independent verification. Now I want to invite you deeper into the debate. Imagine you could design the ideal version of this program. What would you require? Independent civilian oversight on procurement and equipment distribution. Guaranteed maintenance funding. Market agreements that ensure fair prices for producers. Legal protections for farmers against seizure or extortion. Training that includes women and marginalized groups, not just men, and pathways to formal employment beyond seasonal work. If you require any of those safeguards, you grasp what it takes to turn a symbolic act into sustainable change. If you are skeptical, consider the alternative lessons. Nations have tried dramatic fixes before: quick distributions, grand ceremonies, sweeping decrees. When those efforts are not tied to durable systems, they can create fleeting headlines without structural benefits. When they involve security actors, the line between protection and coercion can thin. Those are not philosophical objections, they are practical warnings grounded in cases across the world where short-term optics replaced long-term design. So where does that leave us? It leaves us watching an experiment that has real potential and real danger. It leaves us expecting to follow outcomes, yield reports, market data, independent audits, and human accounts from villages where this is working or failing. And it leaves us asking whether the conversion of manpower from conflict to production can be a model for other places or whether it will remain a contested and incomplete chapter in a longer history of struggle. Before I close, I want to ask you some questions that will make this video live in the comments. Do you think state-led agricultural mobilization is a viable pathway to peace in places torn by conflict? What safeguards would you insist on to ensure that the benefits reach ordinary people and not only political allies? If you had to design an oversight mechanism to protect both civilians and trainees, what would it include? Share your perspective. Your answers will shape the conversation that this video is trying to open. If you found this investigation useful, subscribe to AfriPol Lens for more on-the-ground reporting and analytical stories from across the continent. If this video helped you understand the stakes, click like to support more reporting of this kind. Leave a comment with your thoughts and questions so we can build a conversation that matters. Share this video with someone who cares about development, security, and the real lives behind big political gestures. Thank you for staying with me. This story is still unfolding, and it will be measured not by the images released today but by the harvests people are able to keep, the markets that sustain them, and the lives that find steadier ground beyond conflict. We will keep following it, and I hope you will follow along.